In the dark, silent depths of the Atlantic Ocean, where no sunlight ever penetrates, something mysterious and little known occurs. In these bottomless expanses, shrouded in darkness and mystery, a brave team of professional divers embarks on a dangerous and risky dive. Their main goal is to explore a long-forgotten, mysterious sunken ship whose fate and history have been lost in time and space. This abandoned maritime giant, buried under layers of corrosion and ocean depths, holds echoes of a distant war, long ago woven into legends and myths. However, when the team descends into the cold waters, into the depths of this lifeless and sluggish hull, what they discover exceeds all their boldest expectations and assumptions. Long-buried secrets begin to surface, as if coming back to life, evoking surprise and awe among the researchers. These mysteries, hidden beneath layers of time and oceanic abyss, challenge conventional history, raising questions that no one dared to seek answers to. What is hidden inside this underwater tomb? And why was its history deliberately erased or forgotten? Why was this particular part of the seabed, this lost underwater citadel of centuries past, so carefully masked and concealed from explorers' eyes? Prepare for a dive into the unknown, a journey into the depths of mysteries where each new discovery only heightens the intrigue and opens new horizons for enigmatic stories. Before we continue our story, I would like to note that such research requires special care and patience. They help us understand that the true history is often much more complex and tangled than it appears at first glance. In this context, it is worth mentioning how important it is to maintain interest in exploring the unknown, as each new discovery creates a chain of questions that need answers. This story is about a certain mysterious object often associated with horror and destruction, an underwater death machine created to instill fear and chaos beneath the waves of the ocean. It was the U-7669, one of the most powerful and terrifying combat submarines developed by Nazi Germany during World War II. This submarine, nearly 76 meters long, was a true technological marvel of its time. Inside, it housed 6 torpedo tubes, and its captain possessed iron nerves and unwavering determination. The power and technological complexity of this submarine made it a unique weapon. It could stealthily penetrate enemy waters, sow chaos and destruction, while remaining virtually invisible to the opponent. At that time, such ships were created with a single purpose: to intimidate and destroy as many enemies as possible, leaving them no chance to respond. So, where did this terrifying machine, this symbolic pinnacle of Nazi engineering, disappear to? The mystery of the disappearance of this submarine remains one of the most intriguing secrets of the ocean depths to this day. Hold your breath, because now we will dive into the very depths of this story, into the secrets hidden at the bottom of the ocean. And what the divers discovered inside the sunken vessel will surprise even the most seasoned explorers. The stories provided by military documents turned out to be not entirely accurate or were deliberately distorted. According to official records, the ship with the designation UA-769 was sent to patrol the waters near the Strait of Gibraltar, a narrow and very dangerous area where ships of the Allied forces often passed. Its mission was to intercept communications and carry out secret missions to disappear without a trace. However, in February 1945, on the coast of New Jersey, in the Atlantic Ocean, in an area where waves gently wash over rocky shores, events took place that in later years attracted the attention of many adventurers and marine researchers. Stories of missing submarines, especially those belonging to the German fleet of World War II, stirred the minds of both military experts and ordinary maritime enthusiasts. One of the most mysterious among them was the story of a submarine that, for some reason, vanished without a trace despite all search efforts. In the early 1940s, during wartime, the German command actively used its underwater forces to carry out secret missions in the Atlantic. Among such vessels was a submarine known by the designation U-8609. Initially, it was supposed to operate in a specific zone, patrolling waters south of Gibraltar, excluding the strait itself, to maximize the effectiveness of its mission and reduce the risk of detection. However, as it approached the designated area, concerns arose about fuel shortages, which became a critical factor in completing its tasks. As a result, the command decided to change the patrol route and shifted U-8609's area of responsibility west of Gibraltar, avoiding direct passage through the strait. Despite these instructions, the submarine never confirmed receipt of new orders. Contact was lost, and the last information received from the crew was dated January 10, 1945. At that time, U-8609 reported its fuel reserves, which was a standard procedure for tracking its position and status, but this time it provided no data about its current location or confirmation of the new patrol zone. This uncertainty led the German command to suspect that the submarine might be near Gibraltar and possibly in danger. Part 3 of 13. After its disappearance several years later, the authorities believed that the ship had been lost exactly there, off the coast of Spain and Morocco, and for many decades, Umanis 869 remained merely a ghostly figure in archives, like a phantom ship, a whisper in old documents that no one managed to find. The image of the crew that set out into the open sea vanished forever into the abyss of the ocean. No graves or wreckage capable of shedding light on the fate of the missing sailors were discovered. The only reminder of those who fought and disappeared into the depths was their name engraved on a memorial, along with numerous unanswered questions. Even the most experienced military historians could not reach a consensus regarding the fate of this submarine. Some claim that it was near Gibraltar and that its disappearance was directly related to that region. Others began to explore more actively alternative theories. And so, after many years, what was found off the coast of New Jersey changed the entire picture, overturning previous notions about the very fate of the missing vessel. This discovery shook those who followed the story to their core and sparked a wave of new hypotheses and assumptions. How could it happen that one of Hitler's deadliest military machines disappeared without a trace, only to be found exactly where no one had been searching? To understand how this happened, let us transport ourselves to the summer of 1991. During that hot season, when the sun mercilessly beat down from above and classic rock music played from a radio receiver, a group of adventure seekers and deep-sea explorers gathered off the coast of Point PLN, New Jersey. These people were not just diving enthusiasts, but genuine enthusiasts, sincerely passionate about studying sunken ships and maritime mysteries. Their weekends turned into real expeditions. When a person steps onto the ocean floor, their heart fills with both awe and anxiety, for every movement could be their last, and any wrong step could lead to catastrophe. That was exactly how the descent into the depths felt, where each minute could be the final one, and every move was dangerous. But in this seemingly bottomless abyss, they immediately sensed that they were not dealing with ordinary wreckage. It was something enormous, unseen, mysterious. These heaps of metal and rust were much larger than simple remains of sunken ships or accidental debris. They seemed to hold within them a story waiting to be uncovered. It was precisely at this moment that everything became even more exciting and enigmatic. When John Chatterton and Richie Kohler surfaced and began their investigations, they realized that they were facing something extraordinary. All official documents and historical records told them the same thing. No German submarine had been lost in this area. According to Allied archives, the last recorded activity of submarines took place on the other side of the Atlantic, near the Strait of Gibraltar. This area was thousands of miles from the coast of Jersey, where, according to general reports, there had been no incidents involving submarines. Yet there, on the ocean floor, they discovered something that completely contradicted these records. The wreckage bore no markings, no hull numbers, no plaques with names, nothing that could indicate it belonged to any specific German submarine, especially the one listed in the 1945 records. Instead, they saw only twisted pieces of metal, sealed hatches, and echoes of sounds from a long-forgotten past resonated in their memories. It was like a ghost existing outside the official history, as if this submarine itself, invisible, unreachable, had become a shadow forever lost to the world's memory. Chatterton and Kohler were so immersed in this mystery that they literally and figuratively found themselves inside it, lost in a labyrinth of secrets. They named it UCTO, an abbreviation, but with a special meaning, because this submarine became an obsession for them. Years passed, yet they kept returning to this place, diving again and again, risking their lives in conditions where every minute could be their last. Their dives were not for entertainment, but for discovery. And each time they faced dangers that could not be foreseen. The use of mixed gases, meticulous planning of decompression schedules, constant risks of hypoxia, oxygen poisoning, or getting trapped in rusty, crooked walls, all was done for one purpose: to uncover the mystery. And each dive became increasingly dangerous, but also more exhilarating. Gradually, through effort and patience, the wreckage began to reveal its secrets. The first thing that struck them was a gauge with German inscriptions, then dials made in the metric system, all still intact despite years on the seabed. And suddenly, an unexpected turn of events occurred. Among the ruins, they found a simple, tarnished dining knife engraved with the name Horenberg. This was a very significant discovery, as it provided a clue that made the mystery slightly more tangible. It was then that they intensified their efforts, consulting naval archives and working with historians. As a result, they traced the name Horenberg to a specific individual, Georg Herrenberg, who indeed was part of the crew of Uranus 869. This fact confirmed their hypothesis. The wreckage belonged to the submarine with that name. And although this seemed already a major achievement, questions related to this discovery only grew stronger. Why was this particular submarine in this location, thousands of miles from the presumed combat zone? What was it doing there, and what led to its sinking? Part 5 of 13. Why neither one search nor one team, when a team of divers and researchers began gathering the final missing pieces of the mysterious puzzle related to the disappearance of the submarine U-769, could have guessed that their efforts would lead them to discover something far more shocking and astonishing than they expected. During a meticulous analysis of the wreckage fragments and attempts to reconstruct the full picture of what happened to the vessel and its 56 crew members, the researchers stumbled upon something that turned their entire understanding upside down. They found one detail that proved to be the key to the mystery: a crew member who, according to documents and lists, should have been on board the submarine, but was absent for some reason. His name was Herbert Gusevsky, and he was registered as one of the crew members assigned to the ship with the code designation Q-969, just a few weeks before it left port. In those final days before departure, Herbert was actively training with the team, sharing cabins with them, participating in emergency drills, practicing all possible scenarios to be prepared for any crisis at sea. However, shortly before the submarine was to leave port, an unforeseen and fateful change occurred. Herbert fell seriously ill. This unexpected and severe incident actually saved his life, as he did not set out on the dangerous voyage with the ship and perhaps avoided the fate that befell his comrades. Years passed, and now, living a calm and measured life in Germany, Herbert could not have imagined that his old submarine was anywhere but the Mediterranean Sea, as he had previously believed. Like most others, he trusted the official version of events, which remained the only and unshakable account for a long time. But everything changed when researchers, Kohler and Chatterton, contacted him as part of their scientific inquiry. They found Herbert at a time when they were unsure if he was even alive, and his surprise was evident. Everything he had been told about the submarine's fate over the past decade and a half contradicted everything he remembered and had heard before. But it was then that they showed him photographs depicting objects from the wreckage, part of the engine, and most importantly, one specific item that caused him genuine shock. It was a table knife engraved with the name Horenberg. This small, seemingly insignificant artifact turned out to be an incredibly important piece of evidence. Herbert recognized it immediately. It was the very knife he once used when serving on that submarine. He vividly remembered that it was this knife he used to cut food while on duty with the crew, and that it was connected to one of his fellow servicemen, a man named Horenberg. He knew this person as an experienced sailor and a good friend with whom he shared not only the hardships of everyday life, but also moments related to training and daily routines aboard. And now, after decades, this knife, forgotten among the wreckage, had become a true treasure for Herbert, capable of confirming his memories and providing the key to unraveling the tragedy. He was convinced that it was indeed Herrenberg, with whom he had served side by side, and who was presumed to have perished somewhere far away in the southern waters of Europe. At that moment, the old man realized that this small knife contained far more evidence than any official document or report. This artifact became a symbol of his own luck. He had miraculously escaped the watery grave, while his comrades had perished where no one would have thought to look for their remains. Herbert did not tell anyone about his discoveries, nor did he seek sensationalism or loud claims. He preferred to stay in the shadows, keeping his secret in his heart, but at the same time, he continued to assist researchers, quietly. Let's start with what remained inside the sunken ship and try to imagine the entire scene that unfolds before the eyes of explorers diving into the depths of the long-abandoned vessel. First of all, the bunks immediately catch the eye. Small, narrow, almost dwarf-like beds arranged in a row, like schools of sardines, neatly laid one after another. These beds were so tiny that an adult man would hardly be able to lie comfortably in them without feeling discomfort. Some still contained remnants of old decaying fabrics on their mattresses, reminiscent of long-gone times when the ship was still in active service. Near these sleeping areas, scattered books lay around, their pages curled and worn by the passage of time, yet still retaining readable inscriptions, allowing one to understand what kind of literature someone once eagerly sat with, flipping through it perhaps during moments of rest. These pages, initially smooth and tidy, had acquired a wave-like curvature after decades underwater, but remained sufficiently legible to read individual words and phrases. Next to some of these items, remnants of larger objects could be found. For example, a comb, or what was left of it after long exposure to water. Essentially, it was a metal or ceramic object that once served for eating, perhaps a plate or a bowl. Inside, there were noticeable traces of food, and at this spot, as if an invisible trace, scattered broken dishes, spilled cutlery, and a single ration can were preserved, which looked almost new despite the passing years. It appeared as if someone had just stepped out for a smoke and left it in haste. There was no sign that anyone had returned for it, as if these objects had frozen in time, waiting for their owners who would never come back. The interior air of this sunken space felt thick and saturated with something unspoken, as if an invisible emotional trace was hidden within, a sense of loss, longing, or despair. Inside the ship, there was a presence not just of dead machinery, but of human lives. These were no longer the Nazi officers described in history textbooks. They were living people, and their fates were imprinted here, in every corner of this place. Some of them were young, only 19 years old. Others were slightly older, 22. Most likely they were guys trying to pass the time between patrols, between dangerous missions, perhaps arguing over food or joking about the command, trying to distract themselves even just a little from the harsh conditions of service. These individuals, despite their youth, found themselves in extreme circumstances, and their personal stories, their emotions, seem to have been preserved here, in this place, even after many years submerged. Researchers hypothesized that in one corner of this sunken vessel, a locker was discovered, its doors still slightly open or fully ajar. Inside, there were items that, despite being underwater for a long time, retained their properties. Objects floating in the water created the illusion that they had not disappeared from the scene altogether. Among them, one could notice a pair of leather gloves, which despite rust and corrosion, still held their shape. There was also a rusty mouth harmonica, which despite a century of water and decay, might still produce some sound if someone attempted to play it. Additionally, a deck of playing cards, sealed in plastic, was found in the locker, a true testament to the human habit of seeking entertainment even in the darkest times. During the war, when torpedoes roared around the ship and death was ever present, someone still found time to bring music, even if only in the form of these cards and the harmonica. This was a blow to the denial and contradictions of symbols such as uniforms with Nazi emblems and patches with names, which remained almost untouched and unchanged. Despite their obvious political and ideological significance, these symbols were firmly preserved on the personal belongings of those nearby. It was this that made everything happening feel very real, not in terms of political conflicts or propaganda, but on a deeper human level. In such a situation, it was impossible to shake the feeling that before you stood not just characters from a history textbook or symbols of the past, but real young people, scared and vulnerable, locked inside a metal shell, a steel pipe or submarine hull, ordered to fight for an empire that was itself collapsing and vanishing. Many of them probably genuinely believed in the cause for which they set out on dangerous voyages, while others, perhaps even most, did so out of coercion, fear, or uncertainty. Ultimately, it didn't matter to them whose side they were on. What was more important was that the ocean, like an indifferent and cold witness, had taken them all, showing no mercy. By the time the story reaches the submarine numbered 869, it had long ceased to be just a warship. It had become a monument, a memorial that, as if frozen in time, waited in the depths of the sea waves until someone would come and find it. Its form, hidden beneath the waves, held many secrets: sealed personal belongings, torpedo tubes, a mirror, possibly reflecting the last glance of someone from the crew at the moment of tragic death. And yet something went terribly wrong on that fateful day aboard this vessel. Something terrible happened that forever changed the course of events. But what if the real threat did not come from outside, but from within the submarine itself? What if we start with the most astonishing and chilling theory, which literally makes the blood run cold? According to it, the submarine U-369 sank itself, not as a result of sabotage or desertion, but for a completely different reason, which seems incredible but could very well be true. It concerns the crew's worst nightmare, a torpedo's circular run. If you're unfamiliar with this term, I'll explain that it refers to a malfunctioning torpedo that, instead of heading straight for its target, begins to circle around, posing a threat to the entire vessel. This phenomenon was well known during World War II and affected various navies, including German and American. Several submarines were lost precisely because of their own weapons, torpedoes that, for some reason, malfunctioned and started spinning, turning into deadly self-destruction devices. Such cases were often called friendly fire because the ship or submarine became a victim of its own weapon, which was meant to destroy the enemy, but ultimately destroyed itself. Supporters of this theory believe that U-369 may have either tested a new torpedo or even launched an attack, but the guidance system failed. As a result, the torpedo made a long, wide circle and, failing to hit its target, sharply turned back, causing devastating damage to its own hull. The ruptures and damages observed on the vessel's hull confirm this scenario. The explosion that occurred inside caused destruction not from the outside but from within. The metal was dented, compartments compressed and deformed, as if a giant had stepped on a soda can and crushed it. All of this points to an internal explosion erupting at the very heart of the ship, forever altering the fate of the crew and the vessel. However, despite the fact that this theory seems incredibly frightening and quite plausible, it is not the only story associated with the submarine. The history related to the submarine mentioned in various sources often raises more questions than it answers. First and foremost, the discussion revolves around the so-called submarine of the Navy, which, according to some magazines and records, ended up at the center of a mysterious and complicated situation. Let's try to examine more thoroughly and carefully what is known and what raises doubts, what has been confirmed, and what remains the subject of speculation and hypotheses. It all begins with the fact that many studies and observations indicated that information about the position and condition of this submarine was, to put it mildly, not entirely accurate. Mainly, data obtained by various researchers and divers were close to the truth but did not match completely. The more people delved into studying the wreckage, the clearer the oddities became, raising more and more questions. For example, if we assume that this submarine was indeed sunk by deep-sea bombs, a logical question arises. Why do the hull remains show signs indicating the presence of torpedo tubes, which remained sealed as if nothing was happening inside? As if it had remained in a state of rest and did not engage in combat? What is particularly surprising is that if the submarine had been in active combat and was under fire, it would likely have fired at least one weapon to defend itself or attempt to escape. In reality, despite assumptions of explosions and hits, no signs of serious damage typical of direct hits or powerful blasts were observed on the surface. This creates the impression that all of this is nothing more than a vague notion, a pun that is appropriate in the context of a mysterious situation. This pun is especially fitting because some parts of the submarine's outer shell indeed exhibited deformations that could be explained by the shock wave from a deep-sea bomb dropped nearby. However, the extent and nature of the damage did not fully align with what one would expect after a direct hit. For instance, the damage to the hull was localized, without extensive destruction that one might anticipate from a powerful explosion or a torpedo strike with a direct hit. Particular attention is drawn to the vessel's interior layout. The most serious damages, apparently, were recorded in the bow section. It is likely that the most significant destruction occurred there, perhaps caused by a torpedo that, having exited the submarine, turned back toward its source, i.e., the submarine itself. In this case, it can be assumed that the bow section was struck, which explains the localized and specific nature of the damage. Now, a situation emerges reminiscent of a tug-of-war between two versions of events. On one hand, there is the theory of the submarine's self-destruction, which could have occurred due to internal reasons or crew errors. On the other hand, the official version, confirmed by the U.S. Navy, states that the submarine was sunk by external impact, possibly by a torpedo or other weapon. And both sides essentially have their arguments, although these arguments remain not entirely substantiated. Their evidence, so to speak, is not completely pure. Some details are questioned, they are tainted by delays, lack of complete documentation, and missing signatures, which gives them an aura of distrust and ambiguity. What complicates the picture even further is the possibility that U-969 could have been operating under secret orders and under the control of covert teams, receiving unconventional, perhaps even chaotic, directives in the final months of the war. In 1945, the German command found itself in complete chaos. Communication was becoming increasingly unreliable, orders were frequently changing, and some documentation was lost or destroyed. It is possible that this very submarine was sent to a completely different location, possibly even to U.S. territory, and that no official record of this was ever made. This hypothesis explains the strange placement of the wreckage, the absence of obvious signs of combat, and even the confusion surrounding the events. Even the coldest and most lifeless matter, no matter how bleak it seems, can still ignite questions and doubts, leading us to ponder hidden secrets and unknown facts. Sometimes it feels that even the vast ocean, with its infinite depth and power, cannot forever bury the truth, conceal it forever in the dark depths of its waters. There are mysteries and theories, such as those about non-existent records or hidden espionage missions, that remain unresolved, forever raising questions that haunt scientists, historians, and those who sincerely seek the truth. And what if the wreckage of sunken ships and ship debris are not just evidence of past events, but messages that we were never meant to decode or understand? Perhaps these wrecks are not only testimonies of war, but also peculiar signs left by those who perished there, meant to convey something important, something hidden behind centuries and layers of ocean depths. In that case, a question arises. How easy is it for us to think of World War II, as of those massive battles, tragedies, and heroes, as something we only encounter in textbooks, documentaries, or old black and white archives? Nearly a century has passed since those events occurred, and with such a distance of time and space between the past and the present, it seems almost tempting to believe that all the important stories have already been told, that all secrets have been revealed, that every hero is named, every battle documented down to the last bullet, and every fate known and understood. But then, almost as a rebuttal to this illusion, a discovery was made that overturned our understanding of history: the discovery of the German submarine U-969. This event did not merely rewrite the lines of some dusty military report or historical chronicle. It challenged the very idea of complete and definitive knowledge of the past. Because here, just a few hours sailing from the shores of Jersey, lay this enormous piece of military equipment, lost in time, forgotten and invisible to all. No one, neither the United States Navy, nor German historians, nor even the crew's families, had the slightest idea of its existence until it was discovered. And surprisingly, this happened not thanks to a government-sponsored expedition, nor with the support of a major research grant and powerful ships. All of it was accomplished by two people with a boat, a dream, and a dangerous, almost obsessive obsession with seeking the truth. This is the essence of this story. It is not about military power, strategic importance, or fame that could be gained by discovering or raising valuable artifacts from the ocean floor. It was much simpler, about pure human curiosity, about the desire to understand what exactly the depths conceal. Technology undoubtedly played an important role in this process. Modern sonar systems, side-scan imaging, diving gas mixtures, sophisticated mapping programs. All of these help not only to locate the sunken vessel, but also to conduct a thorough investigation. However, it is important to remember that technology is merely a tool. The main role in this discovery was played by human determination, perseverance, and courage. It was people like John Chatterton and Richie Collier who contributed by spending hundreds of hours, risking their lives just to answer questions about what this submarine was and why it was there, in the depths of the Atlantic. When they finally managed to identify it as U-969, the story gained a new dimension, for it was no longer just about military equipment or strategic significance. Everything around is filled with a sense of longing, laughter, and deep sorrow, as if these feelings are intertwined into a single flow, leaving no room for a moment's respite. Time seems to stand still, and everything happening merges into one moment, into a single instant, like a frame from the endless film of life. Each sunken ship on the ocean floor is not just a lifeless part of history that gradually disappears from the horizon of memory. No, it is much more. It is a kind of message, frozen in a bottle, sent into the depths of the ocean by someone who could not complete their life saga. It is a voice from the past, forever frozen, deprived of the chance to finish, forever remaining in the shadows of the sea depths. Modern technology gives us a unique opportunity to listen to these forgotten voices and to uncover the secrets of long-past eras. Thanks to hydroacoustics capable of mapping the seabed with the same accuracy and detail as we use Google Earth maps, we have the chance not just to see, but to understand what lies beneath the water's surface. Progressive and safe diving equipment allows people to explore depths that were previously considered dangerous zones, areas where many did not return, where death could be lurking for anyone. And now we have the opportunity to revisit the darkest corners of the past to bring to the surface truths that have long remained hidden. However, with this power, this expansion of our capabilities, comes great responsibility. It is not enough just to find sunken ships and submarines. We must also tell their stories honestly and respectfully. Otherwise, discoveries like the submarine designated UMNS-8609 could remain lost forever, forgotten in the depths of the ocean. It is terrible to realize how many similar vessels, ships, submarines, or even entire military units involved in various conflicts, including World War II, still lie somewhere in unknown depths, concealed beneath layers of silt, shrouded in secrecy. Their stories, buried under the dust of time, unknown and waiting for their moment to be heard. Each new discovery is not just an addition to educational materials or historical archives. It is a step toward making our perception of the past more truthful, more humane. That is why such finds are important. Not because they are dramatic in themselves, although their drama is undeniable, but because they serve as a sobering reminder. They emphasize that the past is a multi-layered fabric, and there are always new horizons yet to be uncovered. There will always be people whose fates remain unknown, whose stories have not been heard, and we must remember them. The discovery of the submarine UMNS-8609 was not an end, but the beginning of a new chapter in our understanding of World War II, naval battles, and the lives of those caught between these worlds. This event opened new horizons for exploration, expanded the boundaries of our knowledge, and reminded us that even in the depths of the ocean, many secrets still await their moment. So when you hear about divers exploring old wrecks, remember, these wrecks are not just scrap metal, but resting places for those who never made it home. Perhaps they remain in the ocean abyss, leaving no name behind, no trace in the world they left. Thanks to people like Charlton and Collar, as well as modern technologies, we gain the opportunity to give these forgotten stories a second life. We can remember and honor those who were not famous leaders or generals, who were simply children in uniform, carrying out orders and disappearing into the ocean's abyss. The truth is that the ocean is a repository of secrets, mistakes, and sorrows.